I'm guessing that many of us in the room know the children's book, The Little Engine That Could, beloved book, one of the most beloved of all time probably, and many of us at one point or another have read the book to our children or to our grandchildren or possibly to both. And just rehashing the plot of The Little Engine That Could, it's a pretty simple plot. Anyone happen to have read it recently? No? Trevor, yeah? And what's the plot? Do you remember what happens? Doesn't think he can. That is a great summary. So remember, there's a tall mountain, right? There's a tall mountain, and there's a train that needs to be pulled over the mountain, and the train's engine breaks down. Of course, they're trying to get up to the top of the mountain, and the train's sitting there waiting for some other train to come along, some other engine to come along and rescue it and take it the rest of the way so it can get to where it needs to go. And other big and powerful engines go by, and for one reason or another, some kind of excuse, they're not able to help the stranded train. And then there's a small engine kind of puffing along, and it agrees to give it a shot, right? To give it a try. And in the end, it's the small engine that successfully is able to haul the train over the top of the mountain. And the motto that the little engine recites, like a mantra almost, is, I think I can, I think I can. So that simple, straightforward story has captured our imagination now. It's almost 75 years old, that book, just about the same age as Beth El, actually. So much so that we've just read it over and over again to our children and our grandchildren through the generations. There's something about the story that is fundamentally appealing to our sensibilities, and maybe even a number of things, actually. I mean, certainly it reminds us that a spirit of optimism and a spirit of hope sometimes is what is needed to sort of carry the day and get us where we need to go, even when circumstances feel bleak. And that's a lesson that we all need to return to now and again. Maybe now's a good time to remember that. It's a strange time that we're living in. It also brings to mind that story, the power of the individual, how an individual, one person, or in this case, one train, can make all the difference in the world. And that message is a message that's intensified by it being the smallest person, the smallest train in the story that makes the difference. And I've always suspected that one reason why children are so engaged by that story, why they love it so much, is because a child is small. A child lives in a world of giants, if you think about it, and we adults go about our busy lives, and children may occasionally wonder about whether they can make an impact in the enormous world that's unfolding all around them and that they're struggling to understand. And if so, how? What kind of impact might they make? So when a child reads The Little Engine That Could, he or she is reminded that sometimes it actually is the smallest thing or the smallest person that makes the biggest difference. And that's a traditional theme in literature in general. J.R.R. Tolkien, in the classic The Lord of the Rings, my favorite book, created, of course, the Hobbits. The Hobbits are tiny folk, right? They're the smallest ones, but strong in spirit, and ultimately, they're the ones who will save Middle-earth, the world that Tolkien created. More recent times, you can think of Harry Potter, or Philip Pullman's His Dark Material books, for those of you who are familiar. Those where a young, marginalized boy and girl become the people against impossible odds, almost, to change the world for the better. And always, whether explicitly or implicitly, the heroes in these stories return to the mantra of the little engine. I think I can. I think I can do it. And through that belief, and of course you need some perseverance, and you got to throw in some courage, and faith sometimes can help also, the characters manage to accomplish something that others wouldn't even dare to try. Now, of course, modern authors did not invent this trope, like with so many other tropes in literature. It's at least as old as the Bible. In fact, the Hebrew Bible, it's one of the central motifs that the small character, the little character in the end will make all of the difference and change things for the better. And maybe the best example of that is the story of King David. And that story begins, if you remember, with David as the youngest of a series of sons, the least physically imposing. The Bible makes a point in telling us that, the one who is often overlooked and whom no one would expect to do anything important in the world. And then what happens? The giant, right, Goliath, strides out onto the field of battle. Everyone else runs away, but David is the one who steps forward. He's a small boy. In fact, the text makes a point to tell us at that moment, David is a na'ar, means like a young teen. He's a na'ar. And unarmed, he has a slingshot, like literally a boy's weapon, a slingshot and a couple of pebbles. But of course, the smallest with his actions, that's what turns the tide of battle in favor of the Israelites. This morning's Torah portion reinforces that same idea, a very different way though, sort of comes to it by a different path, different direction. We began reading, as Max told us, the book of Leviticus this morning, and the first few words of the book are Vayikra el Moshe, that God called to Moses, and then Vayidaber Elav, and spoke to him. We talked about this in our Torah study class this morning. The first word of the book, Vayikra, which is what the entire book is named for, is called in Hebrew, is spelled in Hebrew Vav, Yud, Kuf, Resh, Aleph. Vav, Yud, Kuf, Resh, Aleph, for all of you Hebrew grammarians out there. But there is a strange rule about how the Aleph in that word is supposed to be written when the Torah is written out by the sofer, the person who writes the Torah. That Aleph has to be written smaller than all of the other letters in the Torah, right? We talked about that in our study group this morning. It has to be smaller than all of the other letters in the Torah. In fact, when it's not smaller than the other letters in the Torah, when it's not written properly, when it's not smaller, then the rest of the Torah is not considered to be usable. The rest of the Torah is not considered to be kosher. So in a way, the whole Torah hinges on that one small little letter. And on top of that, of course, what sound does the Aleph make? None. It's a silent letter. So it's the smallest letter and a silent letter as well. But if it wasn't there, the Torah would count for nothing. Now, some see in that a symbol of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. You know, here we are, still to this day, one of the smallest people on earth, few in number, but we are necessary. We make a difference. We matter. We make a difference in the world. The problem with the Aleph part of that, the silent letter, we are not a silent people, not by any means. Jews are not quiet in that way. But if we were quiet, we wouldn't be able to make the difference that we do, I would argue. And this morning, I would like to understand the Aleph in two other ways, that small Aleph. And particularly with Passover coming up a week from tonight is the first Seder. And if you think about Passover, two small, seemingly powerless, often overlooked, but absolutely necessary ingredients for the Passover Seder. Small, often overlooked, but absolutely necessary. The first is the poor person, the marginalized citizen. We begin the formal part of the Seder by reciting the Halach Ma'anya. The Halach Ma'anya. We point at the matzah, and we say, this is the bread of affliction, and then we say, Kol dichvin yete v'yechul, Kol ditzrich yete v'yifsach. Anyone who is hungry, all who are hungry, let them come and eat. All who are in need, let them come be part of this, be part of our Seder. So we literally need the presence of the marginalized person, of the poor person to begin the Seder, because the poor person, the marginalized person reminds us of two things. One, of our blessings, and two, of our responsibilities. So you need to have that person at the Seder. And of course, every Seder, you could make the following argument. It's the smallest person in the room, who makes the biggest difference. Why is that? Because we ask the youngest child at this, what is it, Sherry? The 4 questions. We ask the youngest child to recite the 4 questions. Without that, no Seder would be complete. It's the smallest, the youngest, that makes the difference there. Many of us have been in the position of reciting the 4 questions. I vividly remember the first time I did it. I was very, very nervous. It was a Seder here in Baltimore, and I was called to the front of the Seder table, and my Zaidi was sitting right there, and I had to stand next to my Zaidi, who was he was not an intimidating person, but the moment, and I remember my heart beating, and what am I thinking to myself, of course, right before I say the Ma Nishtana? I think I can, right? And in the end, it worked out, I think, okay. That story of the little engine that could, I think, in some ways, is found in the Torah itself, a slightly different version of it, but a story we're all very familiar with. It's the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel. And the Torah text tells us there that the angel says to Jacob, after naming him Yisrael, Kisarita im Elohim v'im anashim vatuchal, because you have struggled, you have striven with Elohim, with God, v'anashim, and with people, vatuchal. It's an interesting word. It means, and you could, you were able to, you did what you needed to do, you got over the mountain, you prevailed. So we will say for all of the young people next Saturday night who stand to say the 4 questions, vatuchal, you will prevail, you'll be okay, it will be fine. And so also for Am Yisrael, for the Jewish people, the start of this spring season, vatuchal, we will prevail. Shabbat shalom.